So in terms of training, let's continue this concept in a slightly different context. If a teammate is being a bit lazy in training or isn't improving as fast as you might like, how do you guide and how do you help them out as a captain?
Yeah, I think that's where captaincy can be really important. As a coach, if you're the one constantly on someone's back about not training hard enough, that relationship can get quite strained. Whereas the captain is on court and they can really lead by example. If the captain's putting in the effort and doing everything that they should be, then they're well within their rights to be asking their teammates to be doing the same thing. So the captain really is responsible in training for driving those standards, but also setting those standards. So as long as they're doing that, those conversations can happen a lot easier with the captain than with the coach.
This might lead into a wider conversation about developing a culture, growing a culture, like we discussed earlier on. How do you develop a culture in training? How do you encourage positive traits amongst your teammates and people?
I think the setting of kind of mid to long term goals is really important. You all know what you're working towards then, and then the hard work starts to pay off later in the season. But if you don't have those mid to long term goals, you don't really know what you're working towards. And if you are told to put in more effort, then you don't necessarily know what you're looking for as an expected result, and it can be quite hard to motivate yourself. So if you have those longer term goals in place, then it can be really helpful for building that culture and know what everyone is working towards. And then it doesn't just have to be the captain. Everyone knows what is expected and can bring each other on. If the captain isn't performing, then it can be a newer player who can go up to them and say, listen, this is where we need to be. But ideally, you're picking a captain who is setting those standards all of the time.
How important are the other senior players within the team in this?
It can be really important. If you've got a group of senior players, then making sure that they're involved in those decisions and conversations is important. But it does depend on the setup of your club. I know there's a club in Dundee and they've got a lot of young players coming through with less of those experienced players. And so those experienced players take on a huge role in bringing on those younger players. And so you'd have a much smaller leadership team. But I think it works just as effectively. It just depends on what sort of players you have within your team as to how big or small that leadership group is.